Call the roll.
Good morning. It's 11:03 a.m. Calling the roll for the Monday, April 9th Board of Control meeting. We have Nan Baker, Dale Miller, Trevor Macular serving as an alternate for Dan Brady, Mike Dever,
Here.
Armin Budish,
Here.
Dennis Kennedy, and Lenora Lockett. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Board of Control minutes of April 2nd. Any corrections? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Dever. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. Any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Okay. No tabled items?
And no tabled items.
Okay. Let's go.
First item BC 2018-211, Department of Public Works, submitting an amendment to a contract with Frank Novak and Sons, Inc. for interior painting services at various county buildings. And it's for the period December 1st, 2016 through November 30th, 2018 for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $210,673.
Good morning, Matt Reimer representing the Department of Public Works. This is a contract amendment for cost to be able to perform the remaining services that we have in progress at the Cleveland Police Building construction project, specifically to provide interior paint services for the second floor and fourth floor build out, which will be the primary floors for the probation department. The recent history on this contract, we were before you and the board approved a time amendment extending the time period of this contract on March 12th of this year. I believe it was, if my memory serves, Mr. Mackler asked me if we needed more money. We hadn't yet completed our cost estimates at the time of that amendment, but since that time we have, and this represents an amount to complete work as well as utilize the existing value of the contract that takes that into account. Happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Councilwoman Baker.
Thank you. We were just, I thought maybe I wasn't aware, but what does NTP mean?
Notice to proceed.
Notice to proceed, okay. And secondly, then, now knowing what that is, it states on the item detail that upon approval, the county will issue a final NTP for interior painting, yet this is the final ask. So how do those two, how is it that we're finishing and then we're asking for more?
No, this is the amount, Councilwoman, that would be required to finish.
Okay.
So with this amendment, we'll have the amount of funds necessary to finish the Cleveland Police project with respect to painting services. And then, so once we get that approved, we will then issue a notice to proceed to Novak to continue the work that they're performing beyond what the value they already have.
If I may just, first, so for clarification, upon approval means this approval?
Yes,
Got
yes.
it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item BC 2018-212, Department of Public Works, recommending an award on requisition 42033 to Flag Zone in the amount not to exceed $47,736, and it's for the purchase and delivery of 780 gross U.S. flags.
Good morning, Tom Pavich, Department of Public Works. We're just recommending the award to Flag Zone for the purchase of flags for the Memorial Day. This is for Veteran Services. Public Works is quarterback this bid as long as I can trace back. This was a formal bid. It was closed, I believe, March 20th. It went to 19 different vendors. We had 5 bids received. Flag Zone was the lowest at $47,736. The high bid was $112,000. This is going to go to 12 different locations for cemeteries.
Thank you. Questions? Councilman Miller?
Did I hear right that they won this contract last year as well?
Yes, this dates back to, I believe, as far back as I can trace is 2005. So every year we quarterback this. The estimate this year was $50,000. This came in under. Every year it's hovered right around the $47,000 to $50,000 range.
It is good that we're getting competition on this contract.
Yes, it is. Every year we get multiple bids. This year we had 5, range from $47,000 up to a couple at $49,000, $68,000, and $112,000.
And do we have a requirement in the bid that the flags have to be manufactured
Absolutely.
in the USA?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We do
I was
get,
gonna
and we
even
do get,
mention that.
and we do get samples every year, so we have multiple people review them just to make sure.
Thank you. Mr. McAleer.
Mr. Chair, just to add on to what Tom was saying, the history on this, the Veteran Services Commission used to bid this out for the county for the flags that would be placed at the cemeteries, but we ran into an issue where like Boy Scout groups and other veterans organizations requested the use of the flags after Memorial Day, and the Veteran Services Commission, the board over there didn't want to reuse the flags, so that's how Public Works started doing this. So appreciate Public Works doing this for Memorial Day.
Great. And these will be reused?
Yeah, usually the cemeteries have groups, veterans groups, Boy Scouts that they would give it to. They'll box them up. The Boy Scouts will come and collect them and stuff, and then the cemeteries will pass them out.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, item BC 2018-213, Department of Development, recommending a federal home rental loan to Bristol Apartments LLC in the amount of $450,000 for assistance with the development of 20 units of multifamily housing located at 2928 South Moreland Boulevard in Cleveland.
Good morning, Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. Requesting approval of this loan to Bristol Apartments. The county is anticipating participating at $450,000. The city of Cleveland is participating at $495,000, and Village Capital Corporation is at $295,000. The remainder of the project cost will be covered by tax credit equity and the developer's equity. This is a vacant building in the Shaker Square area of the city of Cleveland.
Thank you. Did you say that Village Capital is at $295 or $395?
$395.
$395. That's what I thought. Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, item BC 2018-214, Department of Information Technology, recommending an award on requisition 42281 and enter into an agreement with State of Ohio Department of Administrative Services in the amount not to exceed $420,000 for software licenses and maintenance on the IBM LPAR mainframe. And it's for the period March 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
Good morning, Dennis Sullivan with Department of IT. This is an MOU agreement with the state of Ohio for the IBM LPAR licensing, and the functionality it gives us down at the mainframe operations in Columbus. I know it's another acronym for you. LPAR is logical partition, so you don't have to buy a separate piece of hardware for every application you want to run. This licensing will provide network activity, virtual tape, data storage and backup, and offsite mirroring of the virtual tape. This is again down at the state's computer center, the move that was approved
Thank you.
quite a while ago now.
Any questions? Councilman Miller.
Why is the contract only done for 10 months?
You know, I believe, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe it has to do with some of the timing they were hoping.
Janelle Green, Department of IT. It originally was supposed to be for January, but the state didn't give us the MOU until March. So it was supposed to cover the entire year. This is a contract that we do usually enter into with them annually. And again, this was just late this year.
Is there any reason why it couldn't be done for 2 or 3 years at a time?
Well, this is where the mainframe is, where Famous is held and things like that. And we're anticipating rolling off of that. So we only doing it for the remainder of the 1 year. And it's always been annualized for states' purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
And possibly to your point also, it hasn't increased. It was 420 last year too. So there's no benefit in leveraging multi-year.
Okay, fine.
Further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2018-215, Department of Information Technology. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 42298, which will result in an award recommendation to Microsoft Corporation in the amount of $3,806.82. And it's for the purchase of 2 Microsoft Surface Pro i5 tablets and peripherals for the Sheriff's Department. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Dennis Sullivan, again with the Department of IT. These are for the Sheriff's Office. These are not 2 additions, they're replacements. Their desktops will be removed from the inventory. This is to add mobile access for 2 of their employees. And the purchasing was via the Texas DIR, which is Department of Information Resources, which was approved by this board back on June 29th as a method of procurement.
Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Any questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2018-216, Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division, recommending an award on requisition 41284 and enter into a contract with AccuScripts Pharmacy in the amount of not to exceed $276,000 for pharmacy services and medical supplies for the Juvenile Court Detention Center. And it's for the period July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2020.
Baker with Juvenile Court. We did an RFP for this project. This is actually, we had to do 2 RFPs because nobody responded to the first one. AccuScripts will be providing both our medical supplies and all of our pharmaceuticals for youth in our detention center starting July 1st.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. McAleer.
Sir, who currently does the service?
AccuScripts.
Oh, there's the same. Okay.
Further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item, item BC 2018-217, Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division, submitting an amendment to a contract with Cornell Labraxis Group, Inc. for evidence-based anger management group therapy services. And it's for the period July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019, to change the terms effective July 1st, 2018, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $36,000.
Sarah Baker with Juvenile Court again. This amendment is just to add in our second-year funding for this contract. We actually plan on issuing an RFP for this more than likely sometime in September or October of this year. The change in terms is for just a few general things within our contract. We had some issues with the vendor that they were billing far more case management than they should have been, so we added in a clause to modify that language so that they can't bill us for as much case management. And we also changed the type of assessment that they would provide for the youth. It was more of a specific assessment in the first year, and we've changed it so that they could use more of a general assessment.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Item BC 2018-218, again, Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division, submitting an amendment to an agreement with University of Cincinnati for cognitive behavioral intervention training services for court staff, and it's for the period August 7th, 2017 through June 30th, 2018, to extend the time period to June 30th, 2019, to expand the scope of services effective March 12th, 2018, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $18,000.
Sarah Baker with Juvenile Court. This project is part of our competitive reclaim grant that we were awarded. So we're amending it to just add on that second year. We will also be adding in additional dollars, and part of the second year is that since we already had our bulk initial training, we don't need that any further. So all that this will be covering is 6 on-site consultations by the University of Cincinnati, as well as 6 video conferencing sessions for our staff.
Any questions? Mr. Kennedy.
Sir, the $18,000, is that just what we pay University of Cincinnati?
It will be for next year. We paid in the first year, I think it was $31,750 maybe, but that also encompassed the initial bulk training that they had to do for everybody.
But I mean, that doesn't include like travel or any expenses associated with
It's
it.
just the straight conferencing and the consultations that they'll come up for.
Can those travel costs be charged against the grant?
I think they can be.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item, BC 2018-219, Sheriff's Department, submitting an agreement with the Village of Highland Hills in the amount not to exceed $25,000 for inmate housing services, and it's for the period January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
Good morning, Ken Mills, Director of Regional Corrections. Request approval of this agreement. This is for us to start housing the Village of Highland Hills arrest, probably at Bedford Heights is probably where we'll be putting them.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. McAleer.
Is the contract based on a per inmate per day? Yes.
$99 a day
Same
per
rate,
inmate.
okay.
In trying to standardize the price across the board.
And this is the fourth city now? Fourth municipality, right, that we've taken over corrections for?
Yes. We have, well, we've had Euclid, we have Brantnall, Cleveland, and Highland Hills.
And they will all be standardized.
Yes.
Same terms as the city.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Baker.
Yes, and when you say it's revenue generating and not to exceed 25,000, you're anticipating about 18,000 to be generated from this?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what you think. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Further questions? Mr. McAleer.
Ken, do you have how much this village saves on this? I mean, I doubt they have a lot of inmates.
They don't
but
have,
still-
I can get that. I can get the last year's average and come back.
Okay. Could you
But
give
it
that?
is a savings for them because they pay somebody else now. They house theirs other places.
Could you give me that for all four cities, though, just so I can send it out to the council members, please?
Great. Any other questions? And don't forget when they're saving not just the cost of the prisoners, but they're saving insurance, liability issues, et cetera. So there's a lot of reasons why a city would want to join, even if they don't save money, although I think all of them can save money. Further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2018-220, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 42049, which will result in an award recommendation to Court of Common Pleas Juvenile Court Division, and the amount not to exceed $29,444.55, and it's for the Coordinated Approach to Low-Risk Misdemeanors project in connection with the fiscal year 2017 Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Disproportionate Minority Contract Title II Formula Grant Program. And it's for the period January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn from Public Safety. This grant is actually for decreasing the overrepresentation of minority youth in the juvenile justice system, and it targets at-risk kids between the ages of 10 and 17. The way that we select the vendors is that we actually post on our website that there's this opportunity for funding, and then we directly send out the notice of funding to about 116 contacts out in the community. From there, we receive the funding proposals, and they're reviewed by an allocation committee who then makes recommendations. This is the first of 3 awards that are being recommended, and the time period here, January 1st through December 31st, is to coincide with the grant performance period. But because these are monies that we receive from the state, however, we cannot actually enter into the contract until we go through the process of accepting the award, setting up the index, and then setting the appropriation, which is what causes the delay.
Thank you. Questions? Councilman Miller.
So, did you say there's 3 winning vendors?
That's correct.
And who are they?
You have that. It's going to be Golden Ciphers, Juvenile Court, and then the Omega Mentoring Youth.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item, item number BC 2018-221, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services. Again, it's a two-part item. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 42250, which will result in an award recommendation to Jewish Family Services Association in the amount not to exceed $28,529.73. And it's for the Family Violence Services in connection with the fiscal year 2017 Stop Violence Against Women Act Block Grant. And it's for the period January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. And B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning. Okay, this one is actually for the Violence Against Women Act, and the method in which we select the vendors are exactly the same as I just explained with the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Grant. So we send out to over 100 community contacts. It's posted on the website, and then we have an allocation committee that looks at it. This is the first of 7 contracts that are going to be coming up to you. And this contract with Jewish Family Services, they serve adult victims of domestic violence who have limited language proficiency, also adults with special needs, and/or Jewish and suburban victims of violence.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes.
Councilman Miller?
What's the total amount of money available for this program?
It's about $490,000.
And who are the other 6 vendors that have been selected?
There's going to be the City of Bedford Municipal Court. There's going to be 3 contracts with the City of Cleveland for their law enforcement, their sexual assault advocate, and their law department. Cleveland Rape Crisis and the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center will be the other ones.
So will there be additional items coming for each of those?
That's correct, yes.
Councilwoman Baker?
Thank you. This, along with the other, and now that we're on 221, so this is not a 12-month contract. This is more like an 8-month contract because we're 4 months in it already.
We're 4 months into it, but the one thing that happens is that in the case of both of these providers, they actually have grant contracts from the previous year. So by doing the contract for the entire period, they're able to, fully expend last year's contract dollars, then move into this contract dollars so that they can exhaust all of their grant monies. So we do these contracts to coincide with the grant performance period to increase their opportunities to actually pull down grant dollars.
So if I'm understanding, they use last year's dollars for the first 4 months of this year.
In some of these cases, yes, and in these 2 particular, yes. They're still working off of their last year grant awards.
And even though that expired 12/31 of the prior year, they can still expend those dollars?
We did is we did amendments to continue them.
And is there any way that either one of these 221 or 220 will ever be within the year that is being asked or proposed, or will we always be 3 or 4 months in the rears in these proposals?
As far as the contract, we'll always be in arrears because the process is, we actually started this process last August. We didn't receive the notice of awards until the end of January is when you had the opportunity to approve one. The other one you just had the opportunity to approve on March 12th. Because we have to go through the process, we make the recommendations to the state comes back to us, tells us what our final award is, and then they review all the projects that we send down to them, and then they say, yes, we'll agree to go ahead and fund those. And with all of those processes happening, it just doesn't happen before the performance period starts.
And just then, given that, is there any concern that it could be farther into the year than 4 months?
In the past, it has been, so this is actually an improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further, you know how it works with the state. Any further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2018-222, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 42289, which will result in an award recommendation to Ohio Guidestone in the amount not to exceed $11,145, and is for the R Rules for Pro Kids and Families project in connection with the fiscal year 2016 Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Title II Formula Grant Program, and it's for the period April 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2018. B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Okay, this one is also the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention, which is to decrease the number of minority youth engaged in the justice system. The funding for this is a little different in that last year we had a provider who was not performing on their previous grant awards, and so the initial grant award that was going to be made to them was rescinded. And so what we looked to do was reallocate these monies into the community. So we went through the same process of letting everybody know, posting on the website, sending out a notice of the supplemental funding opportunity. And this is one of, I believe, 5 that are going to come to you with recommendations to actually fund. We received 7 responses. This one for Ohio Guidestone, their project, the youth will receive one-on-one coaching and tutoring, and each youth will create a personal and planning notebook with short-term and long-term goals, and they anticipate serving 10 youth by the end of the year. And when I say the end of the year, by September 30th, it's the end of the grant year.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Miller.
You said there's a total of 5.
Correct.
Are the other 4 on today's agenda, or is it going to be a future meeting?
2 of them, there's one more is on today's agenda, and I believe the following 3 will be next week's or the week after. They've all been submitted. They're just making their way through the approval process.
Why can't we kind of have them go through as a group and get them all here on the same day?
In this particular case, we wanted to make sure, because they've only got until September 30th to get them done. We sent them all out to the vendors at the same time. They came back at different schedules. We're trying to get them lumped together, but because they only have until September 30th to get these done, we wanted to make sure they could get started as quickly as possible, particularly in these cases because some of these are new projects, so they don't have previous awards that they could be incurring these expenses against. They all are existing programs, though.
Okay. Further questions? Councilwoman Baker.
So this is an unusual circumstance. Next time we should have the year, do you think, to expend for these programs?
Well, hopefully next time we won't have a vendor that's underperforming where we have to withdraw their award.
Okay.
So that's what happened here. Is this was somebody who was just not performing, so we actually reallocated their money.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2018-223, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services. A, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 42285, which will result in an award recommendation to Cleveland Eastside Ex-Offender Coalition in the amount not to exceed $3,446.12, and is for the Project ROC Trauma-Informed Reconnection Care Program in connection with the fiscal year 2016 Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Title II Formula Grant Program, and it's for the period April 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2018, and B, recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
This is also with the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Grant, and this is the reallocated money. I do want to correct one thing I just said to Councilman Miller. It's actually 4 awards are coming off of this, not 5 from the previous. But on this project, Project ROC, they're looking to transport youth to visit parents or guardian who are incarcerated in order to promote continued engagement and hopefully deter the youth's involvement in the justice system. This program, they're planning on transporting up to 100 youth before September 30th.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Miller.
So, what exactly does the program entail?
This one is actually, this nonprofit actually has a transportation system where they have youth who do have parents who are incarcerated, that they will literally take that youth down to visit that parent in order to keep that relationship.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. McLear.
Do they have more funding than the $3,400? Because that doesn't seem like a lot to transport 100 youth.
They do have other funding. I don't know what that is off standing here, but I can get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2018-224, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services. A, requesting to apply for and accept grant funds from Ohio Department of Public Safety, Office of Criminal Justice Services, in the amount of $22,454.18, and it's for the fiscal year 2017 Stop Violence Against Women Act Administrative Grant Project, and it's for the period January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. And B, submitting the grant award in connection with said application.
This grant actually pays for a portion of two of the positions in our office that actually work on the VOWER project. Specifically, it's the program officer and the budget officer.
Thank you. Questions? Councilwoman Bailey.
So if this pays for two people that are in this department and were 4 months into the year, how were they being paid?
Well, it only pays a portion of their salaries.
Okay.
And actually, it's less than 10% at any given time. We will be able to go back, though, and bill them retroactively back to January 1st.
So they're waiting for their money?
No, they've gotten paid because they are county employees.
Okay.
And they do work on other grants. Plus, the budget officer particularly also has some general fund responsibilities. So it's just we'll reimburse the general fund. We'll make application to the state to reimburse the general fund.
And if I may, this is a January 1st at 12/31, so will we always be, I mean, is it usual that they would let you know 3 months into the calendar year that you receive funds that we could have been using in January?
This is normal, yes.
Okay.
This one, just as a frame of reference, we start the work in on-base, but we actually can't submit it till we get the notice of award. We submit these notice of awards within 1 to 2 days of receiving them.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Dever. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Next item, item BC 2018-225, Department of Health and Human Services, Cuyahoga Job and Family Services, submitting an amendment to a contract with Enterprise Community Partners, Inc., promoting the Earned Income Tax Credit, other tax credits, and providing free tax preparation assistance to low and moderate income families. And it's for the period July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2018, to extend the time period to June 30th, 2019, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $325,000.
Good morning, Bob Math with the Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of Job and Family Services. Recommending an amendment to our contract with Enterprise Community Partners. They're the lead agency in the Earned Income Tax Credit Coalition, which is a community-wide effort to connect low and moderate income families to opportunities and income through refundable tax credits and that increase families' income. The coalition currently operates 23 volunteer income tax assistance sites throughout the community. They provide free tax preparation and one-on-one financial counseling. The coalition is led by a steering committee consisting of 9 organizations. The county has been the single largest supporter of the coalition since its inception. When it started, about 10 years ago, they were doing, the coalition was grassroots organizations were doing about 300 tax preparations each year. Currently, this past tax season, they've done over 13,500 tax returns, generating refunds to in excess of $20 million. So talk about the return on investment, it's absolutely terrific. The coalition's trained over 400 volunteers during the course of the year. And the balance of the coalition's budget's grown over the years. I mean, we're the county's the single largest, funder of the coalition, but now the budget's increased to almost $700,000. And they receive money from the IRS, from United Way Services, about 8 or 9 different banks that support the efforts of the coalition.
Thank you. Questions? Councilman Miller.
For this particular population that we assist with tax returns, does the new tax law make the completing of their tax returns more difficult, easier, or no significant change?
Councilman Miller, to my knowledge, it shouldn't make too much difference. We use the IRS software package, so we don't expect it. At least I don't know for sure. I mean, there was no impact this year during the current tax season. What it's going to look like next year, I'm not really quite sure. We expect it'll have a little impact.
Okay.
Additional questions? Mr. McAleer.
Bob, do you have by chance how many county employees volunteered this year? Because I know we try to get county.
I don't know. I could find that out.
Mr. Kennedy.
Bob, what's the 325? Is that based on, what's the cost breakdown on that?
The budget for $325,000, it covers one and a half staff of enterprise, that the program manager and an assistant that really do most of the legwork, the outreach and everything. There's a portion of there's about 15% that goes to administrative costs of the enterprise, to their local office and to their national office down in Maryland. The balance, which is about $200,000, goes to partners that they have that they contract with. They contract with Cleveland Housing Network, Neighborhood Housing Services, an organization called ESOP, Empowering and Strengthening Ohio's People, Asia Services in Action, and Famico's Foundation. They help with some of the marketing, and they also run year-round tax sites. So that's where most of the money goes to these partners.
To the partners?
Yes.
Is there any reason we couldn't do that? Contact the partners and coordinate that?
Is there any reason? I suppose there's no reason. It's a year-round activity. I mean, it's really pretty intensive in terms of our marketing and outreach, and coordinating, 23 volunteering, assistance sites, as well as, running Super Saturdays, 4 or 5 different locations. Could we do it? I suppose we could always bring on additional staff if we wanted to. The coalition has built this momentum,
Just one more question. If it hasn't been bid since 2014, how do we know that there's nobody else out there that can do it?
When we initially bid this, and the last 2 times we bid this out, they were the only respondent. And, probably the only people that would respond are probably their current partners, and they're not interested. They're interested in just being part of the coalition. Again, the money that enterprise realized out of this is a very small amount. It's just we felt that instead of, bidding it out this year, just to amend the contract, I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of momentum that's been building over the years. IRS has a very good relationship with enterprise, and they financially support it. So, and we could bid it out. We chose this year not to.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a two-part item, item BC 2018-226, Department of Health and Human Services, Community Initiatives Division, Family and Children First Council. A, submitting an RFP exemption due to lateness, which will result in an amendment to a contract with Case Western Reserve University, the Begun Center for Violence Prevention Research and Education, and the Center for Innovative Practices, Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences, for closing the Achievement Gap program. And it's for evaluation services for the period January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2017, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2018. No additional funds required. And B, submitting the actual amendment with said RFP exemption.
Nobody here to talk about it?
No.
Chair, I do have one comment on the item.
Yes, just it's my recollection that This is a no-cost extension for the CTAG evaluation. In part, there was $25,000 to $30,000 left in the contract. That is being used. Is there, Mr. McAleer?
Well, just one, I guess, comment and something that maybe we can work on moving forward. I know why we do the RFP exemption due to lateness. The previous county executive, I believe, directed that OPD bring forward that as due to lateness. But that's something, considering we do have a lot of RFP exemptions sometimes, that if we could maybe revisit that, potentially it wouldn't be listed as an RFP exemption, but something we talk about moving forward. The question, which I know someone's not here, but I thought as part of the budget process for 2018, we were going to move that CTAG evaluation in-house, even though there was extra money. I thought we were going to start doing the evaluation in-house.
That I don't recall. On the first item that you mentioned, I think it would be great, as anybody who sits on this committee knows, many, and as the questions have indicated, the answers to questions indicates that even though it says late, in many cases they're really not late. If they're, I mean, they may be late because, you know, we waited for the state to respond or some other item, but they're really not late in the sense that the public would understand it. So if there's a way to rephrase, reword, or make it more accurate, it would probably be wise to do that.
I think in some cases too, Mr. Chair, that we do bid these out. Like it's, you know, where we bid out the original contract, but because the contract expired, which is the case in this example, we have to approve an RFP exemption. Just considering the amount of exemptions we do have to consider, if we could try to revisit or reword that to show that it's not a true RFP exemption in sense that other purchases are.
I agree. I would ask that we get together and figure out if there's a way to make it more clear and accurate and less burdensome. Great. Good comment. In terms of, are you comfortable as voting on this, or? Yes.
For clarification,
That's what I was advised in our pre-meeting. I don't want to misstate, so I won't. I don't know for sure.
And Councilwoman Baker, the original reason for this amendment is they needed to include cyber insurance. No. But that's one of the reasons. They needed to include the cyber insurance.
Oh, maybe this does answer your question, Mr. McAleer. So, again, this was from our pre-meeting. Apparently, Case did the first-year evaluation, and now it's going to HHS, the PEI division. So it is coming in-house. And the 25 to 30,000 will just go to us. That's left over.
Sure,
So I think you're correct.
We're familiar with the evaluation. We're familiar with the CTAG program. I would be comfortable moving forward with it today. If that's okay.
And I think the answer to your question, based on the notes that I took, was that we are taking it in-house as the budget indicated. Any further? Anybody concerned? Question? Okay. I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Thank you. Exemptions.
Item number BC 2018-227, Department of Public Works, and I'm adding the following language: submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in an amendment to a contract with Maple Heights Commerce 2 LLC for lease of space located at 21100 Southgate Park Boulevard, Maple Heights, for use by Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division by Juvenile Court Division Probation Department, and it's for the period February 1st, 2007 through January 31st, 2017. We're extending the time period to December 31st, 2022, changing the terms effective February 1st, 2017, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $394,263.10.
Good morning, John Myers on behalf of Department of Public Works. We're here today seeking an exemption. This was a lease that was entered into back in 2007 for both the auto title and juvenile court satellite probation. That was a result of a RFP public process. Today, the court wishes to continue to use the space and will be coming to council for an amendment. But today, for the exemption purposes, they wish to continue to use the space. In order to move, we would incur moving costs and additional build-out costs, probably in a couple $100,000 range. So as this continues to meet our needs, and it was the result of an initial process, and the rates are market appropriate, we're asking for an exemption at this time.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. McAleer.
John, is the January 31st, 2017 date correct?
It is. So there's some history, obviously, to that. I was focusing initially just on the exemption issue. As to the history, this, as I had stated, was one lease, but we had two different county agencies in the building. Historically, Public Works has worked to co-locate both the License Bureau, the Title Bureau, and the BMV. Those are three separate governmental agencies. We only control the Title Bureau. So at Parma and Great Northern and Golden Gate, we've been successful in co-locating. There was one area that did not, was in our southeast, Southgate Broadway area that were not co-located. Auto Title took the lead in trying to do that, took it a step further and wanted to be the landlord in order to make this work. At that time, the current landlord became aware that we were looking for the auto title and continued to get a tenant who took up most of the building and needed this space where the auto title was. So we had come back before you to seek that space. At that time, we weren't sure if juvenile court was going to be able to stay. And then we knew in the process, during that time, the building was sold. So we were dealing with one landlord, took it down the path, and then came back and a new landlord took it down the path. And then we were looking for new space for juvenile court because we didn't think we were going to be able to stay. As it ended up, and looking around, it would have involved these costs, so we renewed our push with the landlord to do this. So it took a while for us to get to this point, but all for the purpose of saving those dollars. So that's why we're back here with that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't been paying them the month rent?
We are current through the end of 2017 because the lease did have a holdover clause and funds were encumbered for the entire year. So we're current up through the beginning of this year.
Okay. How can, if the contract was only through January 31st, 2017, how did we have the authority to pay them for the rest of 2017, even with the holdover clause?
Because the holdover clause, which was approved, provided for the fact if you held over past January 31st, here was the rent, here was what it would be, and as part of the budgeting process, funds were set aside for that. So we were occupying the space, reviewed with law. I mean, we owed the money, and it was clear that we did, and had that authority. This way we didn't go beyond that in paying because those funds were set aside already for this purpose.
Councilman Miller.
So do we now have all three facilities located at this location?
No, we're still working at, and to do that, we had to temporarily, since this new landlord needed that space as ground floor space as part of their retail component of a large tenant, we had come back to you last year and will continue at this point for a temporary solution that we did actually co-locate at the state's Broadway location in Garfield Heights. It's not a good long-term solution, but we're still working with the state. Part of this was the state wasn't actually ready to commit to the project yet, so fiscally. So we're in that point now where we have succeeded in co-locating actually under one roof, but it's not a good, it's a very temporary situation that can't continue for a long period of time because of space crampedness, but it is functioning as co-located right now.
So if we get together with the state on another facility, that can we get out of this lease? Does it have?
Well, this only deals now with the juvenile court. So the auto title is excised completely. So as of that January 31st date, we moved out of the auto title, moved out of the Southgate location. So it's just what I'm here today for, the exemption for, is to continue the juvenile court space needs at this site. The auto title is another issue that will be coming back to you for support once that gets worked out with the state in a long-term plan.
So now neither the License Bureau nor the auto title is at this location, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I can.
And how does the rate compare with what it's been?
It's an increase, but market rate appropriate, and as I said, significantly cheaper than moving or, more importantly, doing a new build-out for juvenile courts, since the space is still relatively modern and meeting their needs.
Okay.
Mr. Kennedy.
Just to, Councilman, we are looking to relocate the Auto Title Bureau. We're kind of cramped inside a main office of the state. We're not sure that we can coordinate with the state, but I did have discussions with your chief of staff and some of the other staff over some of the options we're looking at, so we should have something more clearly identified fairly quickly.
Further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2018-228, Sheriff's Department, recommending an alternate procurement process which will result in an award recommendation to Guardian Alarm Company in the amount not to exceed $3,600, and is for monitoring and maintenance services for the period April 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
Good morning, Lilia Lathan on behalf of the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department. We are requesting permission to use the alternative procurement process to pay our Guardian Alarm bills for quarters 2, 3, and 4 of this year. Quarter 1 has already been paid.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you. I move to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you. Okay, please take a look at the consent agenda items 229 through 232. And I'd be happy to take any questions. Are there any questions? Councilman Miller.
On 2018-231, it says it's to change the terms on the contract regarding the child fatality review program. What's the nature of the change in terms that's being proposed?
Good morning, Mark Rose-Cortez with the Office of Early Childhood and Best in Children. Actually, we're just adding the insurance language to the contract. They were inadvertently omitted from the original contract.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I move to approve the items on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda items are approved. Other business.
Yes, we have two items. One is an additional item, not a mission-critical item. It's recommending an alternate procurement process for the Department of Public Works on requisition 42445, which will result in an award recommendation to a supplier to be determined in the estimated amount not to exceed $3,922,000 for electric power services for various county buildings. And it's for the period May 1st, 2018 through April 30th, 2021. And the two finalists that were selected to be resubmitted for the electric power rates are A, Dine Energy, Energy Services East, LLC, and B, Interstate Gas Supply, Inc.
Good morning. Matt Reimer, representing the Department of Public Works. We're asking for the Board of Control's consideration of this alternate procurement process, which will result in an award recommendation that will go before council. It was advised to us as we were working closely with the council clerk that this also, although this process has been used previously, that it does require an alternate procurement approval by the Board of Control. By way of context, power purchasing, especially in today's markets, are complex and dynamic. As a result, back in 2014, the county entered into a contract with the County Commissioners Association of Ohio Service Corporation to do a joint purchasing program for power purchases. That resulted in the current contract that goes through early May of this year. This is the successor contract, which is also being sought through the Service Corporation's administrator and results in a shortlisted recommendation that will go before council, and then a refresh date is then set, whereas the rates of good for only that day are presented, and the successor from the shortlist is chosen, and a contract is signed. Look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you. I move to amend the agenda to include this item. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is amended. Are there any questions on the item? Councilman Miller.
Yes, just one. So, am I right that at the end of the day that we're only going to end up with one of these suppliers, that it won't be both of them?
That's correct, Councilman.
And who currently holds this contract?
The current contract.
Second question. You said just one. I'm just joking. Go ahead.
That's part B of question number one. I pulled a Greenspan.
The current contract is held by AEP Energy.
Oh, okay. Did they bid on this time?
They did. They did among 6 other proposals that were submitted.
Okay.
Further questions? Mr. McAleer.
Matt, do we anticipate, this is the same process, like you said, we used a couple years back. Do we anticipate any of the other electric providers coming in, contesting the process that we used? I know there was a little bit of history back in 2014. We had a couple bumps on the road, but we were past that.
Not having been through the process myself, I can't foresee that. The recommendations appear sound from the Service Corporation's administrator, who is Palmer Energy Incorporated. So they seem to be primarily price-based. There are also some other beneficial terms that were factored into the evaluation.
So we're not hearing anything from other providers yet?
To my knowledge, no, but maybe Nicole.
Sorry, Nicole English with Public Works. That was, I think you're talking about the Cleveland Thermal issue, right?
No, because we had some
with AEP.
Yeah, a couple providers.
I don't think we anticipate any of the problems, because that one we ran the same process where literally that morning we get a refresh, and we run to council and amend the agenda and award that day. So I think we should be okay.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one other item.
This is a mission-critical item, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Children and Family Services, recommending an award on requisition 42457 to Grace Haven, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $24,999.99, and it's for emergency placement services.
Good morning or good afternoon. Bob Math with Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of Division of Children and Family Services. This is the county had DCFS took custody of a 15-year-old girl that was a victim of human trafficking. Based upon her needs and the providers in our community, we didn't have a provider that could meet her specific needs. There's a facility that DCFS has used in the past called Grace Havens in Columbus that specializes in working with youth that have been victims of human trafficking. So this child was placed there back in the end of February, and will probably remain there for several months, and then we'll add this Grace Haven to our master contract, as in terms of one of our board and care providers.
Thank you. I move to amend the agenda to include the item. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Agenda's amended. Any questions on the item? Seeing none, I move to approve. Is there a second? Second. Was that Councilman Miller? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item is passed.
Mr. Executive,
Yes, Councilman Miller.
I have another item under other business.
Please go forward.
We had a number of items today where contracts were late, and in a good number of them, it had to do with processes that were outside of our control, particularly stuff dealing with the state. And I'm wondering whether there's been any thought given to doing a comprehensive review of our contracts around the concept of lateness to figure out which contracts that we have are late due to circumstances that are beyond our control and we can't do anything about, and which contracts are due to lateness, due to things that are within our control, namely that either the process hasn't started soon enough or the procurement process is too clunky, and to see if we can come up with a long-term program for reducing the amount of contracts that are late. I saw a report that came out of the IG's office saying that a third of our contracts begin before the contract is signed. That's a high percentage. So I just bring that up and see if we've given any thought to that.
The answer is yes. And just to clarify, I think the IG also determined that, first of all, the number and percentage has come down, which is good, not far enough, but good. And that, again, as you note, a number of the late is really not late, and then, although they're late, but they're not late. And then a lot of it is outside our control. So we are taking a look at that, and we'll continue to do that. I think that we have, in this board as well as in our pre-meetings, emphasized to all our directors that they need to start early and make sure that they get these in as close to on time, if not on time, or early if possible. And I think they have taken that to heart. So a lot of the, quote, lateness is still is going to be unavoidable, but we're working on it. It's a good comment.
I would like to see that separation also, so we can really see what is within our control and what is not, so that that report that comes back from the IG, he then also will separate the two, and that should show a better response to that issue.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other business? Any public comment?
No other business at this time, no public comment.
Adjourn, is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor, please say aye. We are adjourned.